Hi, this is Maggie from Design Code Debug Repeat. Welcome to the channel. In this video series, we're looking at concepts that experienced programmers understand and that many beginner books and videos completely skip. These ideas aren't ignored because they're unimportant. They're ignored because they're hard to explain. Mastering these concepts is the difference between memorizing patterns and really understanding how programs work so you can diagnose and fix problems with confidence. In this first video, we're going to focus on expressions. Here I have programs in Python and Java that will total the values from 1 through a number entered by the user. Don't worry too much about the code, but you can certainly pause the video and read through it if you want to. These programs include assignment statements, function or method calls, while statements, and return statements. You might think of these statements as very different, but what they all have in common is they include expressions. I've highlighted the expressions in each of these programs. To the right of the assignment operator, in Java, the entire assignment is an expression, the arguments to function or method calls, the condition in a while statement, and the expression after the keyword return. If you memorize the patterns for all these kinds of statements without seeing the commonality, the expressions, then your mind will become overloaded with individual facts, and it's going to be harder to write, read, reason about, and debug the code. But if you understand the role of expressions in these statements, they become much easier to understand. So, what is an expression? An expression is a chunk of code that evaluates to a value. If something doesn't evaluate to a value, it isn't an expression. And a value is going to belong to a specific data type, or category of data. A value can be a numeric type, like int or float, or a string, which remember is the programming word for text, or a Boolean, true or false, for example. There are other data types, but we'll stick to those common types in this video. What evaluates to a value will vary slightly with the programming language, but here are some general rules for understanding what constitutes an expression. Now I'm going to switch to the Python shell and Java's J shell. We won't be writing programs in the shells. These are tools that will let us see expressions being evaluated one at a time. After we've established the different ways expressions can be made, we'll look at how they are used in the programs. If you want to practice along with the video, open up the idle shell or Java's J shell in the command prompt. If you type an expression and press enter, these programs will evaluate the expression for you. Let's start small. The simplest expression is a literal, a syntactical element that literally evaluates to what you have typed. So 0, -1, 2, and 100 are all examples of integer literals, and 2.5, 3.14159, and -1.9 are all examples of floating point literals. Hello world and enter a number are examples of string literals, and true and false are the only Boolean literals. Type any of these in a language shell, and you'll get back exactly what you typed. A slightly more complex expression is a variable. A variable evaluates to the value that was most recently in the code stored in the variable, or you might say associated with the variable name. If I first define a variable x equals 10 in Python and int x equals 10 in J shell, then x is a variable. It is a relatively simple expression that evaluates to, you guessed it, 10. If I reassign 5 to x with x equals 5, and then type x, it evaluates to 5. X is an expression that evaluates to an integer, but a variable can also be a string, a Boolean, a float, or another data type. Expressions can also include operators. Let's start with the relatively simple example of an operator and two variable or literal operands. The expression x plus 1 evaluates to an integer, 6. The expression 10.0 divided by x evaluates to 2.0, a floating point result. Examples of logical expressions with one operator include x greater than 10 and x equals 5. The value these expressions evaluate to are false and true, respectively. I can use the plus operator to concatenate strings. So, for example, the string ice plus the string out evaluates to a string, ice out. A call to a function or method that returns a value is an expression. Let's import the math library over in the idle shell. We don't need to import the math class in Java. If I invoke the sqrt function and pass in 25, then the function call evaluates to the square root of 25, 5.0. Every one of these expressions behaves the same way when it appears inside a program. You just don't normally see the result printed. Let's return to our programs and see how expressions are used. So, where can you put an expression? A lot of places. What's important is that the data type the expression evaluates to can be used where we're putting it. So in our program, let's start by looking at the sum to n function, or method, in Java. We have 4 assignment statements inside that function that have a variable on the left and an expression on the right that evaluates to an integer. The first 2 have the simplest possible expressions on the right, literals. We have total equals 0 and I equals 1. And the second 2 have expressions consisting of some arithmetic, total plus I and I plus 1. An assignment statement is a kind of statement with a variable on the left and an expression on the right. As long as the data type of the expression is appropriate, the expression can be any kind of expression that we talked about. In fact, if we look down at main, we have more complicated expressions to the right of assignment statements. They are also evaluating to integer types. In Python, that expression is int, input, I will total the values from 1 to, and in Java, that expression is standardin.nextInt. These expressions are function invocations that execute code to obtain a value from the user and then convert that value to an integer before returning that value. Now, the Python expression is even a little more complicated because we have a function call inside a function call. The int function can take a string as an argument, and it will try to convert that string to an integer. The input function is a function that evaluates to a string. So input, I will total the values from 1 to, is an expression that evaluates to a string. The string that the input function evaluates to becomes the argument to the int function. The call to sum to n is also an expression that evaluates to an integer. We store the result of that expression in the variable total. But let's look at a variation of this part of the program. Sometimes you will see programmers writing something like this: print the total is plus str sum to n number plus period, skipping the total variable completely. Why does that work? It's because in Python, the str function takes an argument and converts it to a string, and that argument can be any expression that evaluates to a value. The variable total, remember, is a relatively simple expression. But the call to the function sum to n is also an expression, so we can put either as the argument to str, and str will convert whatever value the expression evaluates to into a string. In Java, we can also embed the expression in the concatenation, but we don't need to explicitly convert the integer to a string. That is done implicitly. The other few expressions in this program are the variable number, being passed as an argument to the sum to n function or method, the Boolean expression after while, I less than or equal to n, and the expression after return, total. We can put any Boolean expression after the keyword while, and we can return any expression of the correct type after a return statement. That is why you'll sometimes see an expression as simple as a Boolean variable after an if or while, and you'll sometimes see quite complicated expressions being returned from a function or method. Let's summarize what we've covered here. Expressions are a common component of many different programming statements. Expressions evaluate to a value of a specific data type. Expressions can be as simple as a literal, like 5, hello world, or true, or they can be quite complex, made up of multiple function calls, mathematical operations, and logical operations. Expressions can go anywhere you can put a value of their type. Common places you see expressions are on the right side of assignment statements, after the keyword if or while, inside larger expressions, as arguments to function invocations, and after the keyword return. I hope this video has given you some expert insight into programming expressions. Maybe it explains a few mysterious lines of code you've seen in your travels and helps you unravel them in a way that makes sense. If you have questions about anything in the video, please drop a comment below. I'm happy to clarify anything that doesn't make sense. As always, have fun and keep coding.